That was not unusual to kind of hop down, but I really just kind of free fall, jump, like I can do this, and just jumped. And when I hit, it was just a loud crack.
Mm.
And I knew I was in trouble then. I knew it was not a good thing.
Some of you know what it feels like to be called to something and then watch everything around it start to fall apart. That's exactly where this story begins. My husband John and I have just returned from a trip to Turkey and Greece, a journey following in the footsteps of the Apostle Paul and the early church, alongside Jonathan Cahn and a group of believers from around the world. But before we ever got on that plane, John fell. He broke his tibia and his fibula. And what followed was months of recovery, months of uncertainty, and more than a few moments where we looked at each other and said, is this trip even going to happen? Today, John and I are sitting down to talk about it. Not just the trip itself, but what God was doing in the margins of the waiting. Welcome to this series of God's Power Stories, one we're calling In the Margins. Does God seem hateful to you, like he's looking for ways to trip you up? Does the thought of opening his word seem daunting and intimidating? Hi, I'm Anna, your host for God's Power Stories, where we connect with God's love through the power of his stories. I believe that God loves us more than we can comprehend, and we experience that love through stories. If you're here to connect through stories about the power of God, with the wind of the Holy Spirit at your back, you're in the right place. Let's let God light our path so we can take that next step toward the fullness of life he has planned for us. Grab your cup of coffee, that Diet Coke, or flavored water. Breathe. Let's dig in to God's Power Stories. So, listener, thanks so much for joining us today. I have the privilege of bringing to you a man named John Bradfield, someone I know very well, have known for 20 plus years now. John, welcome to the show again.
Well, again, thank you.
We just got a chance to come back from one of those trips that you might consider to be a trip of a lifetime. It was with someone that the listeners may know. I certainly know him and have been following him for the last few years now. His name is Jonathan Cahn. He is a Messianic Jew. He has his own church in New Jersey. He kind of blends Jewish tradition with his belief in Jesus. So I'm sure it would be a neat church to go to sometime, anytime you and I feel like going to a road trip to New Jersey. How does that sound?
That would be nice sometimes, but there's other things I'd rather do, like go to Israel again.
Yeah. Well, this trip, we actually got a chance to go with Jonathan Cahn to Turkey and Greece. Just so the listener knows, Jonathan not only has his own church, but he's also written several books. He's written probably a dozen of them. And I have the last few: Return of the Gods, that was published in 2022, the Josiah Manifesto, the Dragon's Prophecy, and now the Avatar, which was just published in September of 2025. And so I've been following Jonathan for a while. And can I just say, John, when I talk about Jonathan Cahn, there's been a little bit of an eye roll from you, like, what's this guy all about kind of a thing. Would that be accurate?
Well, little would be a stretch. I've never been much for Old Testament or prophesying. I mean, I understand it and I believe it from the days from then, but like now to today, I lean more to it now after this trip and getting to know Jonathan a little bit. But yeah, I was pretty unwilling to move or unwilling to be open minded about it.
Mhm.
I had an experience that a lot of people might not believe and might not understand or, think that it's something wrong. And we can get into that if some other time or, if you quickly or whatever you want. But
So tell us a little bit about that now, if you can encapsulate it. What do you feel like made you resistant to things like prophecy and end time type discussions and stuff like that up until now?
It just always seemed to me like it was fanatics,
Mm,
people that just pounded and pounded and pounded. Some of them are pretty animated when, they're on stage and things doing that.
yeah. So just in getting ready for this trip, I know that I found out about it last summer. I wanna say it was August. And as soon as I found out that Jonathan Cahn was going to Turkey and Greece and that he was calling it the Revelation Tour, I was geeked about it right from the very, very beginning. But when I told you about it, you weren't negative about it. You didn't say no, but I just got this sense that this was not really something that you wanted to do. Would that be accurate?
Very much so, yes.
Yeah.
We have done things that you wanna do that I did not wanna do that turned out to be wonderful times,
Mhm.
and I knew that, and I wanted to honor you in your desires and wishes, and I knew that was a big one for you. There's been more than one time you talked about going to his church. Wouldn't that be cool to go to his church? And I'm like, well, I'm going to New Jersey to go to a church and hear this guy talk about Old Testament stuff, and I didn't think I would enjoy it.
Mhm. Yeah.
But I don't have to honor you. That's something that's so important to you.
We went ahead and we put down a deposit on the trip at the time, but there was this feeling that it's something that you didn't really wanna do. I think it's kind of how you felt when we did go to Israel years and years ago, though, that you didn't necessarily wanna go, and then it ended up being a good thing, so maybe that's kinda where you were coming from. But then fast forward just a few months, so we've told people we were going on the trip, we put down our deposit on the trip, and then November 11th happens. Tell me about that day for you.
Well, we had been in Wisconsin hunting. We usually take the first week or so and go down there and hunt. We have property that we use for deer hunting. I went up
Here
there
in
and tried.
Michigan, right? Here
Yeah,
in Michigan. Mhm.
yeah. Trying about an hour from where we live. Anyway, I was trying to get things ready because we still had gun season coming up, and there was things that I wanted to get done. And I was out there doing that out there by myself, and I was taking care of some things that I wanted to get taken care of.
So you were out there, you were getting things taken care of. When you did fall, what did you hear? What did you feel? What made you know that something was wrong?
I think it's important to know that I was jumping out of the back of my truck. I'm almost 65 years old, and I always tell people your mind tells you that you can still do it until something happens and you can't.
Mhm.
And I've done that many times, not so much in the last 10 years, but that was not unusual to kind of hop down. But I really just kind of free fall jump, like I can do this and just jumped. And when I hit, it was just a loud crack.
Mm.
And I knew I was in trouble then. I knew it was not a good thing. The pain was almost instant and it was overpowering. It was just consuming me. I just laid there for a while trying to get my wits about me. And I couldn't get up. I went to do it one time and I could tell that my ankle was flopping and I could feel
Mhm.
it. And I thought, how am I going to get out of this? I usually carry my phone or whatever and I didn't do it. I thought I got to, get around to the cab of the truck and get up and either reach my phone or the keys. Anyway, long story short, I crawled. I know I passed out at least twice and maybe a third time. Each time it was harder to go. I've had some painful things in life, and it was right up there with that, if not worse. Like I said, I didn't think I was going to make it. At one point, I think the first time I passed out, or the second, I started hollering. We have 100 acres, and I was at the back in the middle. So I was just about as far away as I could get from any people. And I'm hollering and I'm thinking, this is going nowhere. Nobody's going to
Mhm.
hear this. You got to get that truck. You got to get to your phone.
Mhm.
And I know I passed out the first time. I finally made it to there and I was trying to pull myself off. And if you can imagine, you want your feet to push off and it just was excruciating. And I couldn't do it. And I just thought, you got to do it. You don't have an option. You need to
Mhm.
get up in the truck. I don't think anybody knew where I was. And you thought I was when I called you, and after I did, I think you thought I was home.
Like you had said, you had come back from Wisconsin. I think you came back on a Saturday, I wanna say. And Sunday evening, you talked about going up to the property to get some things done. But then Monday, you didn't go. And so I said, "Oh, you didn't end up going up to the property?" "No, I didn't end up going." So this is Tuesday that this happened, and it was Tuesday afternoon. And I had been away from the house for a while. I was actually working on editing a series of podcast episodes. I was out and about, and so when I got the call from you, I thought you were gonna be saying, "When are you getting home? Because 'Cause you've been gone forever," but instead, what I remember you saying is, "Don't get upset, okay?" That's the first thing I remember you saying, and I said, "Okay," and you said, "I broke my leg and I broke it bad." And in my head, I thought, "How does he know that?" And then you said, "I got a hold of Rob," which in my mind, I didn't know who you were talking about when you said Rob, because I was thinking that you were home, not thinking that you were at the hunting property. But you said, "I got a hold of Rob, and he's gonna call the ambulance, but I don't think the ambulance is gonna be able to find me." And so, again, me thinking you were home, which here at home, we have maybe a half an acre, I said, "I'm coming right now," and I was only about 10 minutes away. And you said, "Oh, the ambulance will be here and gone before you get here. You'll never get here in time." And I said, "I'm going right now." So in my mind, you were delirious. In my mind, you were making no sense. So I ended up flying home, not literally flying, but getting in the car and just putting the pedal to the metal and getting home as quick as I could.
Normal driving for you.
Yeah. And I noticed that your truck wasn't in the garage, and I looked into the back lot and your truck wasn't there either, so then I started getting like, "Where is he?" And I flew into the house, and Blue, our dog, was not there either. And that's when it all dawned on me, because when you were talking about going up to the hunting property on Sunday evening, I said, "Why don't you take Blue? I think he'd have fun running around."
Yeah,
Which is not something you typically do, but then when I saw that he wasn't there, that's immediately when I knew where in fact you were. So, I remember when you and I were on the phone together, you had asked which hospital for you to be taken to, and it was a hospital about an hour south of us. So, I just thought, "I'm gonna go there as quick as I can, and I'll be waiting for him when he gets there." So, I got there and went to the emergency room and explained the situation to the intake person. She looked all through the system, "We don't have him yet." And she checked on me a couple of times, and she said, "We don't have him yet, we don't have him yet." And after about an hour, I said, "You know what? I'm afraid that they took him to a hospital up by our hunting property," which is another, roughly 45 minutes to an hour north of our own house, so close to 2 hours away. And she said, "Yeah, I'm kind of wondering that too because we haven't seen them yet." But then finally, you come into the hospital and she's able to take me to your room, which is an ER room.
I was on a lot of pain medication, and most of it was a blur of what happened in there. To be honest with you, I don't really remember much at all. They did the surgery the next day, and I really don't even remember much about that.
It didn't take really too long for you to get the X-rays and to get the results from the X-rays. It took you a while to get to the hospital, but once you were there, they moved pretty quickly. It was packed. The emergency room was completely packed. The hospital was completely packed. So that when they found out what had happened to you, what you had done is you had done I don't know what they call it medically, but it was a clean break with both your tibia and your fibula, which are the 2 bones that a person will have in their shin area or their lower leg area. And the tibia is the thicker bone. It is the bone that goes almost straight down from your knee down to your ankle, and it is the bone that carries all your weight. The fibula is more in your calf area, more like almost like a curvy kind of a bone. And for all I know, it's only there really to give your lower leg some shape because it really doesn't do much as far as carrying any weight. So, what the doctors had said at the time is that you're going to require emergency surgery and that the surgery was going to involve a threaded titanium rod that they were gonna go just above your knee and basically drive that through where your bone marrow would normally be, from your knee all the way down to your ankle, put in screws as necessary to make sure that it's stabilized and that you would have that titanium rod for that day going forward. This is what they do for this type of a bone when it's a clean break like what yours was, and that there were no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They would be doing that surgery the very next day. So that's what they did. You had the injury on Tuesday, they did the surgery on Wednesday, and believe it or not, you came home on Thursday.
Yeah, a little bit, but
Yeah, we were really worried because, we thought, how is he even going to get in and out of the house? But, we have a good neighbor who helped you get in the house. You had a walker, and we figured that once we got you in the house, as long as you didn't have to leave the house for any reason, we could keep you just on the main floor of the house. And maybe that would be an okay thing to do. So that's what we ended up doing. We ended up having in home physical therapy and occupational therapy between that time and the new year. Basically, that entire time, a couple, 3 times a week, we were having therapists in our house. And then once you graduated from that, you were able to do outpatient therapy for, I don't even remember how long, but a number of weeks until you graduated from that. So when all of that happened, when you were there on the ground. I just wanna go back to that too, just so that the listener really understands. You didn't have the phone. Your phone was in the cab of your truck, which trucks are off the ground a ways, and you were pretty much dragging yourself or crawling, kinda like a combination of crawling and dragging from the back of your truck all the way around to the side of the truck, and then somehow, and I think some spiritual being had to have helped you, because I don't know how you would have gotten up high enough to open your door, and then how you would have, in that excruciating pain, been able to crawl into the cab to get to the point where you could get to your phone to call our neighbor up at the hunting property. But it was like a superhuman feat that you were able to accomplish. But when all that happened, what was your first thought?
ouch.
Yeah.
I just knew it
Was the
when
trip anywhere on your radar, or was it, "Ow, I'm really hurt. I'm not sure how I'm gonna get out of this."
that came when I realized I didn't have my phone and stuff, and that took a while to get my wits even wrapped around the fact that I didn't have any way to communicate,
Yeah,
and I don't remember it being cold, but you said it was cold.
yeah.
At one point, I thought, "The worst case, I'm gonna be here asleep and have to fight the cold if it gets cold," but I didn't think it was going to be cold, so I really wasn't worried about the weather either. I just thought
It was
that
cold.
yeah,
It was quite cold. It was definitely below freezing at that time, and who knows how cold it would have gotten overnight. So, yeah, I worry about if you had not been found, you probably would have suffered hypothermia or worse. So, it's a miracle that you were able to get to that cab, get all the way up to your phone, and be able to call for help, and then our neighbor was home and was able to direct the medics back to where you were on the property, so that's pretty cool.
he panicked too. I could tell he was just panicked,
Mhm.
thinking, "How am I gonna find you?" And he was just panicking like it was just I felt so bad for him. Yeah, I could tell he was just wound up and he couldn't settle down.
Mhm.
All that happened about the same time that he showed up and they showed up, and but I never thought about that, but it took them. It seemed like forever to get me how they wanted me situated. Blue was running all over the place,
Mhm.
and I was hollering for him almost early on because I know he wanders away,
Mhm.
and he'd come running back, and then he'd go again. And anyway, during all that, they're cutting my pants, and they cut my work boots. I'm not happy about that. They wanted to cut my coat, and I said, "No, it's loose enough. We can get it off." They said, "Okay, if you want to," and we did. But I just knew that was going to be okay. I knew that. You
Good.
know, I think the only praying that I could muster was when I was trying to get up into the truck, and it was like after the second or third time, getting partway up and falling down, that I just said, "God help me! I have to get my phone."
Yeah.
It was all I don't want to say survival mode, but it was all about I had to do some things to get out of there.
Mhm.
And like I said, there was no panic with me about dying because I didn't think it was that cold or whatever.
Mhm.
So I just to tie it in with the Jonathan Cahn and things, I don't want to give away too much on talking about him, but he mentioned more than once that you're right where you're supposed to be, right here, right now,
Mhm.
and that God has, going to use you for something.
Mhm.
That become more of a part of the story when I heard from you. I mean, I don't even. You said that I didn't get out of ER for a long time because they couldn't get the pain under control.
Mhm.
I had my surgery, I think, was
Yeah,
it?
that was post-surgery, yep. The surgery itself went fine, and it actually went faster than what they had even planned on, and so they said, "You're welcome." There's, like, a waiting room for the surgery, and they said, "You're welcome to stay here, or if you wanna go back up to the room or what have you." I thought, "Well, I'll just go back up to the room, he doesn't even have a roommate," but by the time I got upstairs to the room that you were in, you had gotten a roommate, so then I felt like I couldn't really be in the room, and I was waiting kind of like in a waiting area on your floor and just kept waiting and waiting and waiting. It took hours for you to get out of recovery because they could not get your pain level under control, and how they finally ended up doing that, I'm not really sure.
Me either. Maybe that's why I don't remember,
Yeah,
most. I
yeah,
remember the only thing that I could really kind of grasp when I was when they were wanting to send me home. They put me in a boot, showed me how to move around real quick, and okay, you're going home.
yeah,
And I'm like, I was afraid to death because I didn't know
yeah,
how I'm going to walk, how am I going to whatever. But the boot is a miracle. The boot
yeah,
holds that leg in place, and after you have it on a few days, you start trusting it.
mhm.
But you're
Yeah,
not
and I
walking.
remember I think it was one of the PT people, but it might have been an occupational therapist who said that people don't realize the seriousness of an injury like this because we do put you in a boot right away. We do put you in a walker right away. And so they feel like, oh, must be it's not that big of a deal. But in the reality of the situation is it's a really serious injury. And I know that the doctors had said hopefully 6 months, he's good to go. It might be up to a year before he's good to go. Meanwhile, if you look at between November and May, that's 6 months. So, I don't know how quick it was that you went to, but I went to the trip, and is this trip even gonna happen? And we've already put down a deposit on it, and what is that gonna mean? And all those types of things. And even beyond the PT, although you graduated from the outpatient program, you were still having a lot of pain. And that was something that kept coming up in all of your follow-up doctor's visits. According to all the x-rays and according to all the doctor's visits that we had, I can't remember, maybe 3 or 4 doctor's visits, every single one is like, "Everything's looking great." Actually, I think one of the people had said that it was remarkable or something some kind of word like that, as far as how your recovery was going. So it was all good, and yet the pain was not subsiding. You were still having the pain, even up until the day before we were supposed to leave on the trip, when you had your final doctor's appointment, and the doctor's like, "You're 95 to 98% healed," and you're like, "But the pain?" The pain in the knee and all that kinda stuff. So, even up until the day before, we knew everything looked good, but we couldn't understand the pain, and because we had been in Israel before, we knew all the walking that was gonna take place and climbing and all that other kinda stuff, and I was still wondering. I knew you were going one way or another, but I didn't know if you were gonna be sitting there waiting for us to get done with whatever excursion we were on, or if you were actually gonna be able to take part, so
Well, I didn't help the situation either because I was out walking. I tried to get into walk because I knew I had to walk to build up. That was one things they told me when I left is, your ankles are weak. Everything is weak in there, and the only way to strengthen it is to do all these exercises or whatever. They're easy, simple. You can do them at home. Blah blah blah. And I fell 2 times. Both times I fell again, and that may not sound bad, but I'm going to tell you that hurt.
Mhm.
It hurt. And I thought, "Oh my god, what did I do?" I mean, I was just sure that I broke it or, whatever. And so that was really foolish on my part. And I snowblowed the driveway one day early on, and that didn't do me any help. So anyway, so I felt like that set me back. So anyway, I just throw that in there just because I'm an interesting kind of guy and you like interesting kind of guys with it.
Do you think now, now we've gone on the trip, so we're kind of like we've got that 2020 vision looking backwards. And so now that we're on the other side, do you think the enemy was involved in any of that, whether it be with the injury, with the recovery, with the doubt, with regard to the recovery, with the instability, with the falling, with the strengthening? Do you think he was involved anywhere there?
If you'd have asked me the day we were leaving, I'd have said no. We had talked about it some, and I probably leaned toward that a little bit, and a little bit as I wanted to say what you wanted me to say,
Mm,
in all honesty. But yeah,
yeah.
each time we talked and we did something, I felt stronger and
Mhm.
stronger and stronger that we, just me and you, are one, are doing what we're supposed to do. He talked about being where you're supposed to be, and that just every time he mentioned that or talked about that, I felt this little warmth go through me and thinking, yeah, yeah, that's good. That's from God. Part of the talks with Jonathan too were about Satan, the enemy, puts up roadblocks and tries to get us to go somewhere we're not supposed to be instead of somewhere where God wants us to be. And the more I'm around, the more I realize just how sneaky maybe that Satan can be. Someone told me once that Satan can't make you do anything, but he can tempt you. That's what he has is temptation.
Mhm.
I don't think those things happen by accident. You
Right.
know,
Was there a specific moment where you felt God speak into the situation? A prayer, a scripture, a person who said the right thing at the right time? And your answer might be the person wasn't until the trip when you heard Jonathan Cahn say, "If you're here, God wants you here. You're right where you need to be." Would that be probably true for you? Or was there a time before that that you felt like there was a person or a prayer or a scripture that spoke to you confirming that we should go on this?
I've experienced it in my walk, but never to this degree. When you think about it, if you're a believer and you believe that I would not have come home, I would have passed away out there when I broke my leg. So that experience, crawling to the truck and passing out and all that stuff, you can't see it any other way than a miracle.
Mhm,
God has saved me before. I had a massive heart attack and I happened to be right where I needed to be, and that's a different story. And then the injury, the can I go? Can I go? Do I really want to go? Is this an excuse not to go? And I just felt a oneness with you, and I needed to honor you and honor something that was so important to you.
yeah, it was really interesting because I think there were many times for myself where I thought, "We're not supposed to go, we're not supposed to go, we're not supposed to go." But every time I would say something to you, like, "Do you really feel like you're up to going?" You would say something like, "Well, you know what? I was talking to my PT team, and they think if I do this, this, and that I'll be okay to go." And so many times that happened in the months leading up to this event where I was feeling like I was the one that was unsure because there was a part of me that didn't feel like you really had a passion to go, that you were trying to go because you were trying to be that good husband and that support and all that kind of stuff. But every time I gave you an out, you never took it. And so I think that's really neat how God use your words of encouragement basically to continue to prompt me forward to make it be okay for us to continue to pursue the opportunity to do it. So, where do you think that you had the peace to go? Was it hearing from the doctors? Was it something spiritual that came your way? What was it that caused you to have the peace that, yes, indeed, we need to go on this trip?
I didn't have like this mind blowing point where I go, yeah, I got it. I want to go. I never had that. It was just more about you and wanting to honor you and love you. And what better way You show that I cared. It was important to me because it was
Mhm.
important to you. And I know there's been times in life where I can be pretty stubborn and you can be a little bit stubborn. And, we go round and round about something. And I didn't want it to be that. If I had to go there and sit in the hotel room, I would have done that because that's what I decided. The worst case scenario, I can't go somewhere to get somewhere. That's okay. And just, I think the fact that you sat me down and we talked about early the first time, should we cancel? And I was floored that you would even think about that. That would have been losing a lot of money, which shouldn't be the issue. And there was a second conversation. I know you were just really wondering for sure if we should or whatever. And I think we were both right where we needed to be with that.
Mhm.
But God took that and took us to and our ideas and thoughts on this whole thing and melted them that for two people, husband and wife that love each other. And sometimes we got to do things we don't want to. And sometimes they're big things.
Mhm.
But those things are usually the biggest God moves, makes. And he can't work with you if you don't open yourself up to work.
Mhm.
And that was what I felt like where I was at. And that's where you were at, that we were willing to let him do the work. And that is so not me. And I think it's really kind of so not you either. If you put your mind to it, you're going to do it.
Mhm.
I'm not necessarily like that, but in my own way, I guess I'm pretty basic. This is what God wants you to do, or this is how you tie it all in. That's enough for me. I don't have to analyze it forever. And you just got to take God when he comes and as he comes. And it just seems like when I'm not looking for something, it's when it gets me.
Mhm.
I'm not trying to force things and push things.
Yeah, I think that's very true. In our case, we went on the trip, we came back, and we have lots of episodes that we wanna share this summer talking about what we learned in the margins of the scheduled things that were happening, how God met us in the margins of each of those events. But talk to that person who might be in that season of they're looking into the future for something that they have planned, and yet they're having all of these barriers happen to keep them from doing what they feel like they're supposed to do, feel like God is calling them to do, feeling like, will this ever happen? Do you have any words of encouragement for that person?
Be open. Be open for God. Little things that, daily happen in your life and realize that that was from him. If we open ourselves, everything is from him.
Mhm.
I kept feeling that way on the whole trip. God is speaking, and I'm important enough for him to speak to because a lot of times I don't feel important enough. My thought is God's got better things to do than worry about me.
Mm.
So I would say, look for God, look to see where he's at in your life. Take those coincidences that you think you have had or are having or whatever, and think about it for a minute and go, we have a God of miracles. He's still in the business of miracles and he's moving every day. And it's all for our betterment. That's what he wants.
Mhm.
And just take the plunge. I don't want to say you'll be surprised, but I know for me, when I can get out of that I'm not important enough,
Mhm.
or this, whatever I'm praying about isn't important enough, that's when God can speak to you. That's when, you can open yourself to him. And once you experience that a couple of times or a few times, whatever, it's easier because you start to see things yourself. Sometimes I still get caught up in it. And I know that's Satan. And I don't want to be that guy that woulda, shoulda, coulda.
Yeah. Well, where I kinda went and, again, this is an easy thing to grab hold of when you're looking at whatever your challenge was in the rearview mirror when you've already experienced it. It's harder to grab hold of when you're looking forward to whatever experience you feel like God has for you and you keep running into the barriers. But the place that my mind went was Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Normally, when God asks you to do something, he does not give you a PowerPoint presentation for it. He does not give you a 10-point plan. He does not give you a checklist that as long as you follow this checklist, you'll end up at the result. What God normally does is paint the vision for you, and then he says, "Trust me." And that's what I would say to that person who's kind of wondering and struggling with, I feel like I'm trying to follow God, but yet I have all these barriers in the way. Know that those barriers most likely are coming from the enemy because he knows already this great thing that's going to happen when you follow God's will. So if he can distract you from that or get you to completely say no to it, then he's won and you'll never be able to experience that victory. So trust in the Lord, take his hand that he's got stretched out to you, and let him lead you one step at a time until you receive the victory. So, is there any thought that during all those months of waiting that kept coming to you that you'll never forget?
I already talked about it, but it became an issue of not whether I want to go or don't want to go. It became an issue of this is for you. This is for my wife. And if anybody wants something as bad as you wanted to go, I had to honor it. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I had to. And when I made that decision, it became easy for me.
Mm,
And that's God working too. Because what I would have done in the past is I listened to Satan. I tempted it. It would have been easy for me to go, I'm not going. I went. I was
mm.
faithful and I went.
Hey, real quick, if this episode blessed you in some way, I'd love it if you leave a written review for the show over on Apple Podcasts. These are like gold to me. Reviews help me know what you enjoy while providing insight on what you want to learn about. Also, take a screenshot of the review or this episode so that you can share it on your Facebook or Instagram stories. For Facebook, tag me at Anna Moore Bradfield Author. For Instagram, use Anna Moore Bradfield. When I share you back in my stories, both our lights will shine a little brighter. May you witness God's power in your life today, my friend.